So excited to have you as a guest today.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell people who you are?
Cool. My name is Tim, or Timothy Lee, and I am a product designer at Wealthsimple. So, working on helping Canadians discover their financial freedom through various products. They could be looking at if they're looking at trading by themselves, or us helping them invest in money, or if they're interested in crypto, tax, and all sorts of things. So, I work on primarily the onboarding experience for Wealthsimple. So, for our new users when they first um, once they first
Mhm.
kind of like discover the product, learn about it, they go through like sign up. How do we help them uh, end up or help them towards the product that helps their financial goals best? So I've been doing that. I'm relatively new to the company. I've started a couple months ago, back in January of this year, and so far it's been really great. It's a big environment change than compared to where I was prior to. Before that, I worked at The Score, which is a sports media and sports betting company based out of Toronto as well. And while I was there, I worked on both of our media and sports betting apps, and helped launch that, helped design the first version of our sports betting app that released in the US about, I believe, 2 years ago, and more recently in
Mhm.
Canada. And then before that, worked at a startup, and as well as freelance for various companies such as like Wattpad. And for that, I worked in advertising. So it's a yeah, it's a definitely taken like kind of like a different path, like a lot of people in product design. And yeah, outside of that, just like a huge movie fan, and I
Nice.
love like watching like the Oscars and all that. And then also do a lot of like running as well, like doing like half marathons, 10K runs, and stuff like
Ooh.
that. So I have like I'm training with a coach, so that's kind of like what I
Wow.
do like outside of work. Yeah.
Wow. I'm
Mhm.
always so inspired for runners. I'm not a runner.
Mhm.
I cannot
I
run.
still I still don't know if I am or not. I just
Yeah.
know I'm better at that than like team sports because I'm
Okay.
not very well coordinated. Yeah.
Okay. How did you ended up doing design?
Yeah. So it was kind of a roundabout path as to how I ended up in design. Um, so when I was a kid, my father worked in an architecture firm, and he worked on like blueprints of, I think, primarily office spaces. I don't remember exactly, but he would bring home these like giant, like kind of like semi-transparent like blueprints and stuff like that, and I'd be weirdly like fascinated with those. I don't know why. To this day, I still don't quite know why. But I had a fascination with like spaces and how people move between spaces and utilize spaces and all that. And that translated to when I moved here to Canada, I would it's like a weird kid hobby. I would love going to like open houses and looking at like rooms and like things like that. Um, so that was always like something that in me. I knew like I was interested in like layouts of places specifically, and like through school I actually wanted to become an architect, and I realized I had to take physics, and I barely passed calculus. So that kind of direction was definitely not realistic, and I still did like lots of like arts related things. I played in music. Sorry, I was in like band, orchestra, and jazz band and all that, and did like graphic design and stuff like that, kind of like as a hobby, like just fiddling around like Photoshop, like much like most designers. um, and did like poster design and like stuff like that through university for like as a volunteer. And at that point, I I did a co-op in marketing, and I wasn't too enamored with the industry afterwards. So actually got exposed to advertising and the industry, and how it's like a more creativity and commerce focused. So I became account manager in advertising for about 4 years or so, and there was kind of like a turning point. Um, while one night when I was working with an art director on my team, and I was there to help him through uh, some of the like kind of like the from a content standpoint, what are kind of the main requirements, as he's like quickly putting that together because it was due the next day and we started way too late. It was like 8 o'clock on like a Thursday, and I wanted to be at a bar with my friends instead of doing that. So I was thinking like, if I'm gonna like work, like put like all my heart and soul into something, I want it to be something I'm interested in and passionate about. And I was like observing like what he was doing, helping him along, and I was like, this is like I'm way more interested in doing this than like being kind of that like glue between like production and client and legal and creative teams and all of that. That wasn't really for me. So that idea kind of like germinated in my mind for like maybe like a year or so. And then I was at another job at that time, and I was about to quit because I wasn't happy at all, like with where things were going. And luckily, I got laid off, which gave me like a little bit of extra like money, and kind of like almost like an opening. I'd be like, here's your chance to switch. So got some advice from friends who I knew from like university. They were in computer science, and they're all like developers. Sorry. And I asked like all of them, what would you advise if I want to pursue kind of like that software design direction? And they all suggested to learn it on my own and collaborate with them to like build projects and things like that. So more like practical approach. So I did that. Plus, I was also looking at like, are there like I came across like I think some boot camps, and I found one that was from the States. It was called Slide Rule before. I forgot what it's called now. Or sorry, it was called Springboard before. I think it's switched to Slide Rule or the other way around. It's been a while. Um, and I did that for it was a short boot camp for about 6 weeks or so, 6 to 8 weeks, and it was a pretty brief overview of what UX design is, like discovery process, define, like doing wireframing, coming up with personas and all of that. So it was a good overview of what it is like. And I think the most value, and I'll go into this later, is the biggest value I got was from a really great mentor, and she helped me through my projects, my interview prep, my portfolio, and gave a lot of like valuable feedback for me. And it still took me a while, and I applied for maybe like a couple months before landing my first job in a startup as their first designer, and that's how I got started in design. So it's kind of like a roundabout way, and kind of like taking a risk of like switching when you're feeling uncomfortable and unhappy with where you are.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that because I feel like sometimes we ignore those feelings
Hmm.
and we just keep putting them on the side and then I mean, that happened to
Yeah.
me, and we just keep working and staying in a job because it's easy or you're comfortable with it.
Hmm.
And taking that decision is a hard one. And it
Hmm.
happened to me the same. I got laid off, and I think it
Hmm.
was like the light inside of me is like, you have to take the
Hmm.
chance now. It's now or never.
Hmm.
But I love the part of I went to school for different things back when I was super young, and then I didn't want to take a risk this time again and just going for a full 2 4 years of studying
Hmm.
and realizing that I didn't like the career. So
Hmm.
having that chance for you to talk to some friends that are on the field already and kind of learning a little bit of what it
Hmm.
is UX design. And that's something that I really appreciate from boot camps is like you just jump into it and kind of see what it is
Hmm.
in a short crush time of period.
Hmm.
But I think what happened at the same time with a lot of people that go to school, boot camps or self-learner is like, I have all this knowledge from school,
Hmm.
how I can use these at work. So
Hmm.
how do you think is that much difference?
I think what I've learned through the boot camp um, sorry, not hasn't, doesn't come into play until you spent a certain amount of time and experience, like in the industry. They would teach you like ultimately, like the boot camps is teaching you like a spectrum of tools and tools and processes, and and it's up to you to understand like when to use these things. Not every project starts from the beginning. A lot of them don't. Um, and it's very rare that you can do like spend a lot of time in discovery because time is always a constraint. And um, so, in terms of what I think it was good in terms of understanding what I would be doing long term. I think what I wish it would have prepared a little bit more is I think especially since I started working in like a small startup where it's less about processes, it's more about like meeting timelines, moving fast, and I focused on like the design execution part. So one of the things that I think could be really beneficial is not so much just like a general UX and like a little bit of design, but or UI design, but like maybe they're splitting it up or having a greater focus on UI design because as designers, at least like from my experience, uh, as an IC as well, like I do a lot of like front end like designing. So that part, I wish there was greater training in that area. So a lot of that was up to myself learning on my own.
And yeah, I feel honestly, while you were saying that yes, usually you don't get the chance to do the whole process like they teach you in a
Hmm.
school.
Hmm.
I was really lucky to the project that I'm working on.
Hmm.
We are building an MVP, so we've been having the
Hmm.
chance to
Hmm.
start from zero and do the
Hmm.
whole project. Uh, but I think that's really important too, like learn to use these tools that they gave us.
Hmm.
And a lot of the things that we learn or that we need at work, we need to learn it in ourselves outside of work or outside
Hmm.
of school.
Hmm.
Um, so now that we're in our first job as UX designers, why should I pay attention? Like, what should I work on to keep growing on as a UX designer?
Why should one continue to like learn and grow? Like I think a simple answer would be like technologies change over time, design trends change over time, people's experience with technology changes over time. Like the things, the platforms that they use to interact with whatever you work on would change over time. So things would get definitely like outdated if you don't keep up. Um, that's not to say that there's definitely like timeless design examples too that like will that's been around for forever. Um, I think those are just more like on the visual design and like techniques and tools. That stuff, like say for example, like Figma became popular over the past maybe like 4 years or so. Whereas before that, we had Sketch and like we also have like Adobe around as well. So like that's not on the tool side. And then the things that don't change though, but it's good to always kind of center back on is like when it comes to like say just like design principles and like mainly heuristics and all of that. So like those things don't change, but I think the tools do. So it's a matter of just constantly kind of maybe like resetting yourself. And I actually don't do a great job of this. For like just sometimes you may get like too into weeds of your work and sometimes you don't take a step back and look at it from like a basic like design principles. Am I like addressing everything? So yeah, so I think that's why it's important because like the environment would change, though the general principles don't change that much.
Um, Nice. So yes, I feel like it's like how to keep fresh the knowledge that you learn at one
Hmm.
point and that you keep using at work, but
Hmm.
how to keep training on that topic all the time and not make it like I feel like this is maybe something like breathing in a way. Like we born breathing, and then at one point in our life it becomes so natural that we don't think about breathing. But there are so
Hmm.
many techniques and so many new things that we can
Hmm.
improve our breathing just for like learning, being better at
Hmm.
running. So
Hmm.
we can how we can make these into our life and seeing in a different perspective. Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like
Um,
you get definitely
yeah.
get too comfortable, so it's good to be like uncomfortable sometimes. I think that's why like that's where like either like switching jobs or maybe like one thing that I did at my last job like from time to time was running lunch and learns, and we assigned it to like someone different every single time. So and that person is up to them to pick the topic as long as it's like somewhat design adjacent or design specific, and that forces you to like, oh, okay, I'm gonna pick up something new. So like what I ended up doing for one of them was learning how to design for voice um, through through Adobe XD. So because they have like the tools for like audio like related design. So I was just like, okay, well, like if our product had to do this, had to include like this audio portion, how could it work? So it's just like a what if exercise that's a little bit different and trains your mind to think differently because you're not focused on the interface, you're focused on the kind of like a decision flow approach. Yeah. And different input.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool. And okay, you talked to me a little bit about this when we have our intro call, and it's a little bit linked to our last question. And you were telling me how you kind of specialized in what you're doing now, and how you start being so good at discovery and doing like different things and different approaches. So is any thoughts or tips for designers to level up their career and specialize in a
Hmm.
specific I don't know, in a specific, what is that, a specific, how you call that, a specific
Maybe
a
like,
strength?
yeah, like a specific like area niche. I don't know. I'm not sure
Yes, like
what
a
the
specific area niche.
yeah.
Yes, we can use
Yeah.
that.
So I guess like just to clarify, like I've been working in design in terms of like product growth, pretty much like all at any like major stop I've been at. From my first like design job, I actually took on like the some of the tasks of like a PM on like launching a campaign and like looking at analytics and then like updating and changing over a period of time. Worked on the labs team at Wattpad on like an experimental product. So we looked at our analytics every single week and see like what we can improve. And then at the score, I also worked on a growth team as well when I was there, kind of like laying down foundations of like what we can do for growth. And then now I'm working in product growth as well. So it's been kind of like a linear path in that sense. To be honest, I think it was a combination of like myself volunteering for to do something like that the first time, and then that experience, kind of how that translates into like how my portfolio is a little bit different because instead of like a standard uh, product design like double diamond process, it's like a slightly different part where like the experiment and measurement comes into play a lot more. So it's just like a modification of that and how I presented it in my portfolios, um, and and then um, and then eventually like say like through LinkedIn, if you just write like you work in growth and design, like naturally like recruiters who are looking for like designers in that specific niche would like be able to find you. So I think it's a combination of like kind of raising your hand to work on something like that for the first time, communicating that through your work, being part of like I was interviewed for something like that's growth design related a couple years back. So maybe like I'm not sure if that factored in, but so there's that. There's like recruiters looking for something specifically, and you kind of putting it out there, like say like through your LinkedIn profile, for example, and then all of that just kind of collectively, kind of like puts you kind of like leads you towards like specializing in that specific that kind of like niche. But when it comes to like the other part about like level, I think you also asked about like leveling up your career. I think that's more just it, having like a always like improve like an improvement mindset or growth mindset, kind of like a cheesy way to think about it. Where like not only like are you doing your work, but are you looking for ways to do things to do things better, like in terms of like team processes. Not growth isn't only pertaining to the product and for your users, but you and your peers as a team. Are we making things more efficient? Are we finding ways to improve the quality of our work? Are we helping others grow, like through a lunch and learn, or like some sort of like, maybe it's like a craft focused like portion of the week where it's just like share what you've like built in, like say like Framer or like origami or like Figma or like After Effects, like a way to like find like opportunities to help like yourself and others explore. And I have this little post-it on my wall behind my desk, so just like every day it's just like remember to be better. So like just kind of like how do I just like always think about like, okay, like even if I'm like exhausted from work, what can I do today that, what can I learn today that I didn't know yesterday? So I like trying like a new technique, trying a new way of like laying out your design, trying out building components a certain way, or like dive into someone else's work and understand like how they build something, or like on my own time. For example, like if I'm trying out like a new app and like, oh, I wonder like what they did here, or like if you come across a website that's very different, then you're like, okay, how did they decide on like these layouts and all that? And just having kind of like a more like a critical mind on, or, sorry, not critical, curious mind on things that you interact with, not only digitally, but like when you walk outside and like look at like store signs, you look at like menus, you look at um, uh, for example, like even I find like say like with like vaccine passports, it's a little complicated as to I use like the Apple Health one, but sometimes in dark mode it doesn't work, and always have my phone in dark mode, and like certain places it doesn't work. So like just like okay, so with this, given this constraint, like how can I do it differently? Or think about like say like I live in a condo and I always see like in our Facebook group um uh, occupants, or sorry, the people, the folks living here, they always have like questions about the same thing. So like, can you recommend like a barber? Can you recommend like someone to do your blinds for you? It's always the same thing. So like, instead of like everybody asking something new every time, can I create like some sort of like wiki or like a glossary that they can all like, just like when they go onto Facebook page, it's like, okay, everything you need, it's all here to like make life easier. So like not only like in your work, but look at like other parts of your life. As a designer, as a problem solver, like how can I figure out a way to make things a little bit better given my skill set? Or if I don't have that skill set, what can I learn to do that?
I think these just present those opportunities that they're everywhere. And sometimes we think, okay, if I don't do something at work or specific at work is not
Mm-hmm.
valid in a way because no one is seeing it. But how you keep practicing these skills everywhere, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I found now, and my girlfriend always
Mm-hmm.
gets so annoying. I think is like
Mm-hmm.
you always thinking of design is like I cannot control it. Yes, it's like
Mm-hmm.
something just so natural now that you start thinking, oh, I think they should do this
Mm-hmm.
better, or how I can
Mm-hmm.
improve it, or anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But at work too is how to take advantage of the spaces that are there for you to growth.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's scary because maybe it's the first time that you're trying something or you are not the best at it, but there is no
Mm-hmm.
other way to get better than practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have coworkers and a space that allowed you to do that, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a great opportunity to take. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one good one is even if you've like started working full time, like I think hackathons are a good opportunity to, in a very condensed time, to work on like some project that can be like functional and used, and also like, it can go on your portfolio as well. I think it's always like a good like way for like new designers to continue to like get better at like what they do, and like quickly problem solve and all of that. So yeah.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much again for taking uh, time out of your Friday
Mm-hmm.
off to talk